Joining us now from the United States Capitol is U.S. Air Force veteran and current Maxim cover mom, Representative Anna Paulina Luna of Florida's 13th Congressional District. Anna, thanks so much for joining. How did Pete Hegseth do?
He crushed it. You know what's crazy, Matt, is during that entire confirmation, they only had 3 lines of attack. They tried to attack his family, they tried to attack his military service, and then took everything that he said out of context. So I'm sure you know how these things go. They try to launch the smear campaign, but I think Pete did great, and I think that he has the votes to get confirmed from what I'm hearing.
I think he did well. Also, it was a focused conversation about the role of women in combat. I would love to get your perspective on that policy issue generally, and then how Pete fielded those questions.
Yeah, so look, women in the military is a great thing, and women have unique roles. But if you're asking my opinion as a veteran on whether or not women should be put on the front lines, I don't think that they should. In fact, it was interesting to hear a lot of these senators take what he said out of context. Obviously, I've been talking to Pete a lot. Obviously, he supports women in the military. But the fact is that women should not be placed in certain combat roles. It doesn't mean that they can't be gunners. It doesn't mean that they can't be snipers. But when you're putting a woman, for example, on an ODA team, let's say that team comes under fire, they've actually done studies, Matt, that show that a man's inherent nature will be to help that woman. And that's that quote unquote toxic masculinity that the left likes to talk about all the time, is men actually protecting women in combat. And so what happens is if you're in that position, it can affect the lethality of the unit and also get other people hurt. And so I actually fully back Pete's perspective as an Air Force veteran and also as a member of Congress. And it's interesting to note that it was Democrat senators, Matt, in the NDAA, as I'm sure you know, that were pushing for the draft for females. So when people like to talk about women's rights, just understand that they'll let women compete in sports and they'll put your daughters on the front lines. But if you have a man like Pete Hegseth defending women in the military, they will have none of it.
Pete Hegseth has been described as a change agent by President Trump in this process. What do you think needs to change most about the Department of Defense?
Well, he needs to go through top down and remove the woke ideologies that have been responsible for not just the retention issues that we're currently seeing in the military, but also to remember, Matt, during COVID-19, so many of our conservative service members were pushed out of the military. And I do believe that they used COVID as a tool to ensure that they would push their political ideologies, because you served on House Armed Services. But the current leadership that exists in the military installed under the Biden administration is simply anti-American. And so instead of paying for transition surgeries, I believe that the military needs to go back to focusing on lethality, readiness, and ensuring that they are promoting Americans' ideologies, not just in the ranks in all of our services, but abroad as well.
You represent a lot of those active duty and veterans in Central Florida, and that they're counting on a military that returns to that core mission. Switching gears to some of the headlines in the House of Representatives, Anna, we saw that your good friend and mine, a terrific conservative, Thomas Massie, will not serve on the Rules Committee this Congress. He serves there as a consequence of tough negotiations you and I had engaged in with the leadership in the last Congress. But that's not a punishment for Massie. Massie apparently volunteered to step off that committee. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I can actually tell you that I had reached out to Massie. I saw in public statements that he had made that he actually volunteered to leave the Rules Committee. I will say this about Massie. He did an incredible thing in trying to stop what happened with the reauthorization of Section 702 in FISA that had to be reformed because, in my opinion, as is, it was a violation of American civil liberties. Massie, I do believe leaving Rules Committee, I would say that it's kind of a net loss, but we did ensure that there was another individual that took his place that is a good conservative that supports President Trump's agenda. But look, Matt, if it were up to me, I think that we need more like-minded individuals that will back the Constitution and back the American people on the Rules Committee, and especially those that are aligned with President Trump. And so we'll see. It's a new Congress. I look forward to our very tight majority working together. But Thomas Massie will forever have my respect because of his positions on FISA.
Like Thomas, he is a consistent defender of the Constitution, and we admire him a great deal for that. And there's much admiration for you these days, Congresswoman. You are the cover mom of Maxim right now. I don't think that's ever happened before in Congress, where a sitting member of the United States Congress has such cultural appeal. You had done some modeling for Maxim previously. Now to return to the cover as someone representing hundreds of thousands of people, what's it like?
You know, it's interesting because the reason why that happened, Matt, is because the radical left actually on TikTok launched a smear campaign against me, basically trying to bring forward my Sports Illustrated and Maxim photos from almost a decade ago. And so what I said is I'm not going to apologize. I can actually define a woman. Obviously, you know that there's been a great debate here in the House of Representatives on what constitutes being a woman. And as a result of that, Maxim actually appreciated that perspective. But what's unique about that article specifically, and even that issue, Matt, is it's called The American Dream. And I think Maxim has been one of the only publications in the country to actually put both Melania and President Trump in the article. I actually gave President Trump a copy over the weekend. He loved it. But I look forward to more magazine outlets, and I think more of Hollywood understanding that as elected officials, it's not just the left that has cool personalities and loves this country. There are good conservatives, not just myself, but other people as well. And so I'm happy to kind of serve as an ambassador into culture, but I look forward to representing and continuing to fight for the hundreds of thousands of people I represent in Pinellas County here in Washington, D.C.
Politics, and I think you're right, conservatives have decamped from those culture battles to our detriment. And so to have a terrific mother, an amazing wife, an inspirational congresswoman on the cover of Maxim, I think it's terrific. So I had my former colleague, your colleague, Corey Mills, on the program recently. He said he's eyeing a potential Senate run in the state of Florida in 2026. I know Governor DeSantis has talked to some folks about that post. Have you met with Governor DeSantis about an appointment to the United States Senate, and is it something that might be in your future?
I have not met with Governor DeSantis, and what I have heard from his camp is that I know that he's hesitant about appointing a member of Congress, mainly because he says that we have a very slim majority. But as you know, Matt, there's going to be a special actually very soon to fill some of these vacancies left from the state of Florida. And who knows if President Trump's going to be rapturing more of us to the White House. But what I can tell you is I'm currently focused on representing Pinellas County, but I won't rule out anything in the future. And I say that because you just never know in this game, and you know that.
You never do, and we're glad for all of the terrific work you're doing there on Capitol Hill. Thanks for having Pete's back. Continue to push those Republican senators to vote to confirm Pete Hegseth. We need a Secretary of Defense at the start of the Trump administration. Thanks so much. A great firebrand from Florida, Anna Paulina Luna.
Thanks, Matt.